Well, hello, everyone. It is good to be back with you today. Uh, Dr. Rick here, and been looking forward to getting back and sharing some more about healthy love, healthy relationships, healthy family. Some of you have been kind of following along, and you know that me, my wife, my son, and my daughter-in-law have just kind of gotten over COVID. And the reason I say that was because of that, what you've right, that cough right there. I still have what people keep calling, at least around me, keep calling the COVID cough, which is some of the lingering effects of COVID. We were down for about a month, all four of us, and we all came through it. And so praise the Lord that we're healthy. We're on the backside of a negative, and so we're back to you know producing hopefully meaningful and quality information and insights for you, so you can live the best life you want to live and be the most healthy, mature person that you would like to be and become. You know, most people who've been following along know that I grew up in a broken home, so did my wife. And though I have a PhD and two master's degrees, much of what I teach really is my own journey of healing. It's my own journey of here's what I had to do to become who I am today. And much of what we do in our work is just to help people learn how to relate well. That's the name of our organization. Is we believe everybody wants to relate well, unless there's something pathological with you. But we believe that most people want to relate well. They just never learned how to relate well. I didn't learn it. My wife didn't know. We grew up in broken homes. There was addictions and craziness. So we had to learn it as adults. And so what we do in our Relate Well programs are we teach people what to do different to create the difference that they want in their own life and marriage. And so what we're going to talk about today, right now, is what do you do when your marriage is so disconnected, but you want to reconnect, but you don't know how to reconnect. And that's what we're going to talk about. Now let's be honest for a little bit. All relationships are going to have their ups and downs. All right. I've been married 37 years, 37 and a half years to my bride, Luella. All right. Again, we met back in the early 1980s, 81. I don't actually know when I met her. I remember the first time I saw her. I don't really remember the first time that I met her. And we were friends for 2.5 years. She didn't want to date me at all during that time. And then through a series of events, which maybe one day I'll share as a live to kind of help you understand our journey and what we came through. But we ended up finally dating for a short period of time and got married. And we've been together all these years. However, we both had a lot of baggage from our childhood. All right. We both grew up in homes where there were addictions, where there was abuse, and just craziness, divorce, multiple divorces. So, the reality is just because you have a PhD and two master's degrees doesn't make you healthy, it just makes you educated, right? And so we were committed to making sure that we would not pass on a generational curse, if you will, of dysfunction, those kind of things to our children. But the thing is, we didn't know what to do different. We just knew what we knew, right? You only learn what you learn. And so though we loved each other, we really didn't know how to love well. We didn't know how to relate well. And so in those early days of marriage, though we loved each other, what was very clear on one level was that oops, hang on just a minute. I hope that didn't mess something up there. I was trying to turn the sound off on the keyboard, so please forgive me if I mess something up there. So anyways, what we ended up really doing was having to kind of figure it out, right? And there were times that we really, really were, emotionally just far apart. You can lay in bed next to someone. Excuse me. That's that COVID cough I told you about. You could be laying in bed next to someone and literally feel miles and miles apart from them. In our work, we call that the lack of us. We believe in our work, in our world, that the most important part of a marriage is not the husband, it's not the wife. It's the third part of the marriage. Third part wins, you both win. Third part lose, you both lose. And we're actually talking about the idea of us. Us wins, you both win. Us lose, you both lose. But when you have us in your marriage, because you can feel its presence and you can feel its absence. And when you feel the absence of an us, you move into a sense of aloneness, disconnection. And some couples stay in disconnection for years. For years. The worst 2 years of my marriage was 2004, 2005, and a little bit into 2006. We had a lot of things to work on from our own personal family histories. I had a father who I did not know was affecting me, and some unresolved issues there. Luella had some as well. There was some hyper religiosity on her part that affected us. There's a lot of different things, but we were committed to building the reconnection. All right, we did love each other. I remember one time I just felt so distant and disconnected from her. And she came and she sat down next to me and she put her hand on my knee and she says, I just want you to know I do love you, but I don't like you. Now, I'll tell you something. At that point in time, I wasn't real likable. I had a lot of anger, a lot of hurt. It was leaking out of me in what we call fighting with ill will. And so, I had a lot of woundedness was coming out. That's what we always say to people. If you don't heal your wounded heart, then you understand your wounded heart will transfer itself onto other people. You'll hurt other people on the way. But we were committed to us. And now I'm 59 years old. At 37 years of marriage, us is stronger. I did a Facebook live or a live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. I think about a week and a half ago. We all had COVID together. Me, my wife, my son and daughter-in-law. We all had it together. But you want to know something was powerful? Because us was so strong, we weathered that time to where now I'm about a week and a half away from having COVID really bad, and I'm back to work. You know what I've come to realize? Because us was so strong going into it, it deepened because of it. I mean, our connection went so much deeper, even with my son and my daughter-in-law. Though we needed our own space, that sense of usness and that togetherness, we battled it together. Wow. It gave me a greater appreciation for her, for my son, my daughter-in-law, for my usness with my marriage. You see, every relationship is going to go through periods of disconnection. That's normal. That's just life. It's what you do. It's what you do in the disconnections. They'll either continue to disconnect you and move you into an aloneness. And remember, it's not good that you should be alone. Or you can learn what to do different. And that's what we do in Relate Well. We actually teach people the skills and tools, how to bond, how to connect, how to emotionally regulate the lower order animal brain, and how does the brain work in terms of attachment. There's 10 core relational needs that must be met. And by learning those principles, we are able to navigate through conflict in a way now that doesn't destroy enough to keep us together. You know, the real trick, the real trick of a healthy relationship is when you can enter into conflict with your partner, and at the end of the conflict, your relationship is stronger. That takes maturity and emotional development. That's where my wife and I are today at 37 years of marriage. Now, in the early days, we didn't know how to do that, all right? And so when you're disconnected, that's a part of life. Relationships have their ups and downs. They have the valleys and then they have the mountaintops, right? That's a part of life. Don't be bothered by that. What matters is what do you do? How do you handle those times? And if you can handle those times based on what we call the 4 protectors of a relationship. Now, what are the 4 protectors of an us? You handle all things with goodwill, with respect, with empathy. It always the message is I do care, and all of that through humility. That's the core of what we talk about in Relate Well. We call them the 4 protectors of an us: goodwill, respect, humility, empathy. I sought to live my life by those 4 principles in all aspects of my life. Why? Because I knew that if I treat people with goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy, I knew I was being loving. Because love never treats someone with ill will. It's never disrespectful. It's never uncaring. And love is about humility. Okay. Now, so let's talk about some practical things a person can do if they've disconnected and they're not sure what to do different. All right. So here's some things you can do different. Number one, and this one is going to be a risk. That's why I put it at number one. All right. It's going to be a risk, but take the risk. Number one, open up and start confiding. Open up and start confiding in your spouse. Is it risky? Yes. Particularly if they've been invalidating or insensitive or neglectful over time. But you cannot build connection without confiding, because the way the brain connects is by confiding. This is why you see people who are disconnected, they start confiding in people on social media or at work. And you wonder why they go meet them? Because wherever you are confiding in someone, you're emotionally open to them. The brain has to have two things to bond to another person. First is emotional openness. You don't bond to someone when you're emotionally shut down with them, i.e., disconnection. And so you have to be emotionally open to someone. But here's the thing that the brain does. When the brain is emotionally open to a person, it wants to draw close physically. Because the two things the brain has to have to bond to another person is emotional openness and physical closeness. You know, I learned from my teachers and mentors, particularly Dr. Lori Gordon, how to stay emotionally open and physically connected, closeness, in conflict. And when I learned the skills for that, I'm telling you, our ability to handle conflict just took off in a healthy way. Just took off in a healthy way. So you've got to start opening up and confiding in each other. Confiding is the key to bonding. You got to start talking to each other. We know through research that when couples are in conflict, for those joining, that's my residue of my COVID cough, all right? We know through research when couples get in conflict, they start disconnecting. They stop confiding in each other. They don't talk about their day. They don't talk about the new things that are happening or the things they've read in the news. They just don't talk to each other. They don't confide in each other. Masterful couples, though, are confiding all the time. They're talking, they're sharing. Why? Because they value the connection. So the first thing you've got to do if you want to start reconnecting is you've got to take a risk and you got to start opening up and confiding in each other. All right. In our work, we have a skill we call a daily touch point. Daily touch point is a structured confiding exercise. I raised my kids on this, and I still do it to this day with my bride. All right. Number two, thing that you can do is you've got to start touching and being affectionate. I'm not talking sexual now. I might mean just grab their hand or put their hand on your shoulder or when you walk by, something affectionate. There's something powerful about touch. Remember, the brain has to have two things to bond: emotional openness and secondly, physical closeness. There's something powerful about touch. When couples get in conflict, start disconnecting, they quit touching. They quit touching. They don't want to be touching. I don't want to touch. It's too much of a risk at rejection. Now, if you want to start reconnecting, you've got to open up and confide. That's being emotionally open. And secondly, start touching again. Start being affectionate. You know, maybe if you're sitting on the couch, say, hey, come over here and sit next to me. Maybe just reach over and grab their hand and squeeze it. Put your hand on their knee or something. All right. If you don't start doing those two fundamentals, you're going to find reconnecting very, very difficult. Okay. Now, number three, what if you spent some time together as a couple reminiscing? Reminiscing. Remember the good times in your marriage? You know, you might say, well, Rick, we've had a lot of bad times. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. A lot of couples do. I get that. But it wasn't all bad. What about when you were dating and how you met it? What about the things you did when you were dating each other in those early days of the marriage and the joys? You see, I think there's power in being able to step back and remember the good times and talk about those things and the things that happen where you just kind of make you laugh. Have you ever learned to laugh at yourself, by the way? It's a pretty powerful thing to do when you learn to laugh at yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously. Learn to laugh and learn to value each other. And I think one of the ways you can do that is remembering. Remembering. You know, there's a word when in Genesis 1, God made man in his own image. That the root word for man there is a word called zakar, Z-A-K-A-R. It's a Hebrew word. And you think, well, that's interesting. What does that word zakar mean? And God made man, zakar, in his image. The word zakar actually means remembering ones. Remembering ones. God made the remembering ones in his own image. There's something powerful about allowing yourself to remember. To remember. Remember your wedding day? Remember the first time you saw him or her? Remember the first time that you felt that love? Remember when the babies were born, how you felt toward each other then? Remember walking through a death together or something? You know, if I was to ever give up my marriage, I have all those memories, but somehow getting rid of the marriage would taint all of that. I'm just not ready for that. I like to step back and remember, to ponder and to think, because it reminds me there are good things. There are good things in our relationship. There are good things in Luella. There are good things in me. Number 4, and I think this one's very important, plan a weekly date night. You know, if you did a weekly date night, you could actually do the confiding and do the touching if you wanted to. I used to do when you were dating, right? And so plan a weekly date night. And I would encourage the date night not to be to go to a movie. You could do that if you'd like, of course. Have you ever noticed the difference between dating couples and married couples in a restaurant? It's really simple. In a restaurant, dating couples are talking to each other. Married couples are silent eating. Why? Because married couples didn't go out on a date, they went out to eat. Dating couples went out to eat as a part of a date. It's a very different motive. It's a very different motive. And so one thing we believe is go on a date night. Do some things that you like to do that your partner would, go do things your partner do that you wouldn't do. If you heard my lecture on the power of us, where I talk about the idea that I don't like the mall, but us likes the mall, you know, us will go to the mall. That would be great for a date because that's not me, that's us. When us goes to the mall, that's not me, that's us. When us at the mall, we're walking, talking, holding hands, and dreaming. You see what I mean? And so plan a date night. And this next one I think is very important as well. And number 5 here, I would tell you every day, spend about 15 minutes, just you two, giving each other attention. Now you could do that using our daily touch point that we use in the Relate Well curriculum. Just say, how's your day? If you're in the faith community, how can I pray for you? And then actually pray for them right then and there. One of the things that Luella and I do every morning, literally about every morning, there's a few more we don't, so I shouldn't use the word every, but majority of the mornings, we wake up, we'll just lay in bed and just hold each other and just talk for a little bit. Just talk. That connection, that bond. And then at the end of the day, we do the same thing. Even if I stay up later than her, we're going to spend some time just connecting, giving each other attention. Because when you give your partner attention, what's the message you're sending them? Is I value you. You matter to me. You are loved and lovable. Giving some attention also implies you might enter into their world. You see, that's why I would go to the mall. Because that's like Luella's world. She likes the beach. I don't like the beach. But I'll do that for her. It's a nice thing. So it's 15 minutes every day. Give your partner attention. When they say, I really need to talk, if it's not a good time for you to talk in that moment, then just tell them when is a good time. All right. Say, hey, how about in about 20 minutes, right? Do something that let's make sure By giving a person attention, what you're saying is, I value you, that you matter to me, that your thoughts and feelings matter, that you matter to me. Next, and this one I believe in strongly. If you call my cell phone and hear my voicemail message, it talks about this. Every day. I live this way, so I'm not telling you something that I don't do. I raised my kids on this when they were young. Every day, share 2 things with your partner that you appreciate and are grateful for about them. It might be as simple as, I appreciate that you washed my clothes. I appreciate you took some time to listen to me. I'm grateful for the way that you love me. I'm grateful that we've been together all these years. We all need to hear that we do things well and that what we do matters to our partners. And that's the power of sharing an appreciation, of sharing a gratitude. Interesting thing about gratitude, brain research around gratitude is this. Whenever you are in a state of gratitude, gratefulness, your brain can't feel fear and it can't feel anger. Isn't that interesting? Whenever you move to gratitude, you won't feel fear and you don't feel anger. There's power in living a life of gratitude. That doesn't mean you live a life in denial that things aren't good. I mean, there aren't things happening. But in the midst of things that are happening, I can find something to be grateful for. I can always find something positive to be grateful for. That doesn't mean I live in la la land or in denial of reality. What it does mean, though, is I can see beyond this. I can see that even though this is going on in my life, there are other good things going on in my life. That takes objectivity, and it takes the ability to be in self-control of one's emotions and step into the higher order brain and think about the bigger picture. And there's a lot of power in that for oneself, which also translates into one's relationships. And so every single day, share 2 things that you're grateful for and appreciate. We all need to hear it. Now, here's another reason why I think you should do it. Brain research shows this as well. Whenever you share an appreciation with someone, a gratitude with them, when that person hears that appreciation or that gratitude, their brain releases a neurochemical called dopamine. You can say that with me, dopamine. What is dopamine? Dopamine is a neurochemical. It's a pleasure chemical. It's whenever it's released, there's a mood shift into pleasure. I always like to say it this way. How many dopamine shots do you give your spouse every day? Or does all your spouse hear is criticism, negativity, defensiveness, the things they don't do well? You see, we all need to hear the good things. There's an old proverb that says, pleasant words are pleasing to the soul. Well, how can pleasant words be pleasing to a person's soul? Dopamine. Appreciations are pleasant words. We need to be able to share appreciations and gratitudes every day with each other. And we need to hear it. All right. Next, this one's going to sound a little weird, but hear me out. Ponder what life without your partner would be like. What would it be like if they weren't with you? Grief and loss is a part of life. Death's an inevitability. Loss is a part of life. But most people never, ever, ever, ever really consider what life would be like if their partner was gone. True story. I've been married 37 years, 19th year of marriage. I had gotten out of the shower and gone to my bottom drawer where all my t-shirts and underwear are, right? And so I pulled the door open. And this is going to sound weird, but it's an actual true story. I had this weird emotional reaction. I call it like an epiphany, not in a religious sense, but I had this emotional reaction. I just felt it. And as I felt it was like an awareness at a level I never had before. When I opened the drawer and I had this emotional reaction, I said out loud, They're always in there. And Luella was in the closet. She said, what? I said, 19 years of marriage, whenever I open this drawer, there are t-shirts and underwear there. I never think about them. I never consider them. They're just there. Of course, she came out of the closet looking at me like, are you a nutcase or something? I go, no. Hear me out. I just realized something, honey. For 19 years of marriage, when I open this drawer, those clothes are always in there. I don't think about them. I don't consider them. They're just there. And I said, I just realized something. I take that for granted. Because the fact that I opened that drawer, listen to how I'm say what I said to her. I want you to hear this. Oh, excuse me. I want you to hear this. The fact that I opened that drawer and they're there without me thinking about it, this is what I said to her, is the evidence of your presence in my life. It means you're around. Because if you weren't here, they would not be there unless I made it happen. I take that for granted. Or I should say, I took that for granted. Not anymore. Not anymore. Because there are things that she does around me every single day. A lot of them I don't even consider think about. They're just done. It's the evidence of her presence in my life. I'm not ready for that change. There are things that I do that she doesn't consider. I just do them. They just happen. But if I was gone, they would change. I'm not ready for that. And maybe thinking about life without them might allow you to move to a sense of how much that person does mean to you, the value they have to you, that might make you start to think about things a little differently in the relationship. Because, sadly, most people don't think about those things. And when death or loss comes, that's when they think about them and they have a lot of regrets. I should have. My goal is to die with few regrets. The way I do that is to make sure all my relationships are healthy and whole and connected. So if death was to visit today, I've said and done all that I know to do to have healthy connections. Another thing that you can do when you're disconnected, if you want to try and reconnect, is get out of the rut. Get out of your routine rut. Sometimes life just becomes routine. Now, we all need some form of routine. I mean, the brain likes structure and it likes, something that's comfortable. I do get that. But sometimes the rut, the routine, actually gets in the way of intimacy. Change it up a little bit, Change it up a little. Do some things differently. Do some things you wouldn't normally do. Go, rather than stay at home at night, maybe go out or go sit out, go for a walk. Do something that creates a connection. Get out of the routine of the behavior, the rut, of the things that keep you disconnected. Now, I would say this, you do a lot of things we've already talked about, that would try to change some old routines, right? And that in itself would actually start creating connections. And the last thing I would say to you is there's different kinds of intimacy, but one kind of intimacy is what one person calls joint accomplishment, or an intimacy built around doing something together. Okay. And so a lot of men build intimacy that way, fishing or building something or working on a car. When you see a lot of men doing something, they start to open up with each other. What if y'all volunteered? What if you start doing some home projects together? What if you went and worked at a shelter or did volunteer at a church for a missions project? There's a lot of things you can do together to serve others. Jay Shetty in his book, Think Like a Monk. Good book, by the way. I encourage you to read it. But he says something in the latter part of the book that he's absolutely right about. And he said one of the things he learned in his young day, as a young man living as a monk, He said that the greatest way of living life is to live beyond yourself, is to serve others. Is to serve others. That the highest way to live life is in serving other people. What if your marriage served others? One of the things that Luell and I get to do is we mentor young couples. We actually mentor and coach young married couples. Why? We're giving back what God has given us in our relationship. We're now giving back to others. You see, and so what if you did something together, be it a project, building project, repair project, a service project? Wow, what might that do to your sense of connection, to your sense of us? You see, those are some thoughts that I have for you. I believe there's a lot of power in connection. When us is strong, you're both strong. When us is strong, there's that sense I can take on the world. Our us was strong going into COVID. And though we all slept in different bedrooms, we were all hurting and struggling with our own individual symptoms, the strength of the us in our marriage was actually deepened during COVID. I ponder that either I'm telling you about it because my wife and I are talking about it. She said to me a couple of nights ago, she said, the one thing that COVID did for me, I said, what's that? She goes, it's made me appreciate and admire you in a far more meaningful way. And she said, my love for you is deepened. And I said, interesting. I just got done doing a live on what I learned through COVID. And that was one of the things that I shared was we're so much more closer. And I find that to be marvelous. Because the greatest way to live life is in the depth of the emotional connection that we have. The depth of those emotional connections. And guess what? You decide whether you'll have that or not for you based on what you do or don't do. It takes two to make an us and one to kill it. Now you might be asking, well, Rick, we're disconnected. Who should start? That's a simple answer. Both of you. Both of you. Put your pride aside. Remember, in Relate Well, we talk about 4 principles of living life: goodwill, respect, empathy, and humility. Humility is a powerful way to live life. I would say put your pride aside. Now, I get why the pride's there. There's a fear of rejection, possibly a fear of abandonment. But what if you took the risk and started to open up and confide? And you started to touch and remember the good things that brought you together and the good times you've had. And then you decide, let's go on a date every week. Let's just go on a date every week and just be us, even with the kids. We'll get babysitter or whatever. And then every day for 15 minutes, you just gave each other individual attention. That says, I value you, that you matter to me. And because that happens, you're appreciating each other at least twice a day. You're sharing 2 appreciation and gratitude with each other every day. Giving your partner dopamine. Why? Because you love them. And then as you think about your life without them, you begin to realize, wow, we have a lot. We've been through a lot. We've grown through a lot. We've had good times and bad times. Do I really want to lose this? Is this something I don't want in my life? And out of that, you realize, wow, we need to do some things different. So you get out of the routine. You get out of the rut of what you've always been doing. And as you begin to get out and do things, you might say, you know what? We are so close and connected, and we have done the work, and God has been blessing our relationship. Let's go do something together. Let's go serve others. Oh, you'll get the reconnection you're looking for. And it has so much meaning, so much value. My prayer and hope is you'll start to live that way as a way of being. Because I get to do it today in my marriage with my best friend. This is Dr. Rick. I hope in some small way this has been an encouragement for you. Take care.